Tonight, I want to tell you a quiet story about the power of a focused mind. It is not a story of magic, but sometimes it may feel a little strange. Because on one simple morning, in a small village on a mountain, something in the air did not feel normal at all. High in the hills, there was a village where fog walked between the houses like a slow, white animal. The streets were narrow, the roofs were made of dark wood, and the sound of a distant bell sometimes floated through the cold air. In this village lived a young craftsman named Raymond. Raymond worked with wood. Every day, he opened the old door of his workshop, swept the thin dust from the floor, and ran his fingers over the pieces of oak, pine, and cedar. People in the village brought him chairs to fix, boxes to build, small toys for their children. On the outside, his life looked simple and calm, but inside his mind, it was not calm at all. When he woke up that morning, the sky was still gray. He sat on the edge of his bed and listened. There was no storm, no shouting, no bad news. And yet, he felt a strange weight in his chest, like a question he could not hear clearly. His thoughts were already moving in many directions at once. He did not know it yet, but this ordinary-looking day would not stay ordinary. Before the sun went down, something would happen that would force Raymond to face the noise inside his own mind. Raymond's day usually began in the same quiet way. He walked through the village before the streets became busy, carrying a small basket of tools on his shoulder. The baker waved at him, the children ran past him, and the fog slowly lifted from the old stone path. Nothing looked different from yesterday, but something inside him felt slightly out of place, like a loose string pulling at his thoughts. When he reached his workshop, he pushed open the wooden door. It groaned softly, as it always did. The familiar smell of fresh wood filled the air. Normally, this smell made him feel safe. But today, it only reminded him of how much he needed to finish. He sat at his workbench and picked up a half-carved wooden bird. It was a small order from a father who wanted to surprise his son. Usually, Raymond could carve something like this quickly, with steady hands and a clear mind. But as he lifted his knife, a new thought rushed in, about a mistake he made last week. Then another thought, about money. Then another, about what people might think of him. His hand froze. He tried again, but after a few cuts, he placed the bird down and rubbed his forehead. His mind felt messy, loud, scattered. The quiet workshop suddenly felt too small for all the thoughts moving inside him. A soft knock came at the door. When he opened it, he found Mira standing there with a warm smile and a small bag of apples. "You look tired," she said simply. "I didn't sleep well," Raymond answered, though the truth was deeper. His thoughts had kept him awake, circling the same worries again and again. Mira looked at the unfinished pieces around the room. "You're working on too many things at once," she said gently. Raymond nodded, but only to end the conversation. He didn't want to admit that she was right. After she left, he sat again at the bench. He tried to focus on one task, but his mind kept jumping. Past, future, fear, doubt. His tools lay untouched for long minutes at a time. The morning passed, and he had almost nothing to show for it. He felt a small frustration rising inside him. Just a small thing, but it stayed and grew quietly, like a shadow behind him. And this quiet discomfort was about to become something much heavier. The next morning, Raymond told himself he would fix everything by working harder. He believed that if he pushed his mind enough, the noise inside him would disappear. So he made a plan. No breaks, no visitors, no slow moments. Just work. He opened every window in the workshop to let in the cold mountain air. He hoped the sharp wind would wake him up and clear his thoughts. Then he placed 3 unfinished projects on the table: a toy bird, a lantern frame, and a carved box he had promised to finish last week. "Today I will finish all of this," he whispered, as if the words alone could control his thoughts. For a few minutes he worked quickly. His knife moved fast across the wood. But then a new thought appeared. What if the lantern turns out badly again? His hand slowed. Another thought followed. What if the village stops trusting me? His shoulders tightened. Soon his mind was full again. Full of worry, full of imagined problems, full of noise he could not escape. He switched to the carved box, hoping a new task would help. But after only a few cuts, he felt tired. He moved to the bird again, then back to the lantern. Each switch made his work worse, not better. By noon, his desk was a mess of tools, half-shaped wood, and scattered shavings. Raymond stood in the center of the workshop, feeling pulled in 10 directions at once. When Mira passed by and peeked through the open window, she saw the chaos. "You're pushing too hard," she called softly. "I don't have time to slow down," he answered, not looking at her. "If I stop, everything will fall apart." Raymond didn't want to hear advice. He didn't want help. He believed that forcing himself to work was the only solution. But deep inside, he already knew this choice was making everything worse. Late that afternoon, as the sun dropped behind the mountains, Raymond reached for a piece of cedar wood, one he had saved for an important project. His hands were shaking slightly. His thoughts were loud. His breath was uneven. The knife slipped. A long crack ran through the beautiful piece of cedar. It broke cleanly in two. Raymond stared at it, heart sinking. This was more than a mistake. It was a sign. He thought he still had time to fix things. He was wrong. The day after the cedar wood broke, the village prepared for its annual festival. Children hung bright cloth along the streets. Musicians practiced soft melodies, and families cleaned their doorways to welcome visitors. The whole village seemed full of color and excitement, except for Raymond's small workshop. Inside, Raymond sat quietly at his bench, staring at the ruined cedar pieces. He had planned to use that wood to create a special lantern for the festival. It was supposed to hang in the village square, glowing warmly as people gathered at night. It was his chance to show his best work. But now he had nothing to offer. When he finally stepped outside, the sun was already sinking behind the mountains. He carried the broken pieces to the village square, hoping he could explain, or at least apologize. But when he arrived, several villagers were already looking at the empty space where his lantern should have been. An older woman whispered, "He used to be so focused. What happened to him?" A man added, "Maybe he takes on too much. He never finishes anything these days." Raymond felt each word like a small stone in his chest. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. His mind, once again, was full of noise. Regret, shame, fear, doubt. It was too loud for words to enter. He returned home as the first festival lights began to glow. He sat outside his workshop, feeling smaller than he ever had. His craft, his pride, his dreams, they all felt far away. Then he heard slow footsteps on the path. Elias, the old craftsman who had taught Raymond years ago, stood by the door. His hair was white, his shoulders thin, but his eyes were steady and calm, like a quiet lake in winter. "Your hands are skilled," Elias said softly, "but your mind is crowded. You cannot build anything with a storm inside you." Raymond looked down, ashamed. "I don't know how to change it," he whispered. Elias placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Then come with me at dawn. There is a place on the mountain you have forgotten, a place where the mind becomes clear." Raymond hesitated, staring at the broken cedar in his hands. But something inside him finally shifted. By the time the sun went down, nothing in his life would be the same. Dawn came quietly. The sky was a soft blue, and a thin line of gold touched the tops of the mountains. Raymond followed Elias up the narrow trail behind the village. The air was cool, almost cold, and each breath felt sharp but clean. They walked in silence at first. Only the sound of their footsteps and the rustling leaves filled the air. Raymond wanted to ask where they were going, but something about Elias's calm expression told him to wait. After almost an hour, they reached a flat stone area overlooking the valley. Fog moved below them like slow waves. Elias sat down on the ground and asked Raymond to do the same. "Close your eyes," Elias said. "Just breathe. Don't fix anything. Don't chase anything. Listen." Raymond tried. He really did. But the moment he closed his eyes, thoughts rushed in from every direction. Old mistakes, worries about money, people's voices, unfinished work. His mind felt louder than ever. "I can't," he whispered. "You can," Elias replied. "You are just not used to the quiet." Sitting still while his mind screamed. After some time, Elias stood. "Come, there is more." They walked higher, to a place where a thin stream ran down the rocks. Elias filled a small wooden bucket with water and handed it to Raymond. "Carry this up the path," he said, "but focus only on one step at a time." Raymond began climbing. At first, it was simple. Then his thoughts returned. What if I spill it? What if I fail another task? What if I disappoint him too? His foot slipped, and water splashed over the side. He tried again, and again. Each time, his thoughts distracted him, and the water spilled. Frustration tightened in his chest. "This is useless," Raymond said. "No," Elias answered. "This is your mind, always moving, always leaking energy." That was the second trial. The third trial waited in a small cave nearby. A single candle burned inside. A piece of soft wood lay on a stone table. "Carve just one smooth line," Elias told him. "Breathe with your hands." Raymond held the knife. His hand shook at first, but after a slow breath, then another, something softened inside him. For a moment, just a small, gentle moment, his mind became quiet. The line he carved was clean and perfect. He looked at it, surprised. Elias nodded. "Now you have seen what your mind can do when it stops running." But before Raymond could speak, Elias pointed deeper into the mountain path. "And still, the hardest part of your journey is waiting at the end of the road." The path grew darker as Raymond and Elias climbed higher. Trees stood close together, their branches forming a silent tunnel above the trail. The air was cooler here, almost cold enough to sting his skin. Raymond felt a quiet pressure around him, as if the mountain itself was watching. At the end of the path stood an old stone building, small, square, and covered with moss. A wooden door, cracked and faded, hung slightly open. "This," Elias said softly, is the room of echoes. Raymond frowned. What happens inside? Elias looked at him with calm, steady eyes. You will hear your mind. Not the world, not the village, only your own thoughts. And they will not hide from you. Raymond felt his heartbeat quicken. Part of him wanted to turn around, but another part, tired, hopeful, desperate, wanted answers. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was empty except for a single candle in the center. Its flame flickered weakly, sending long shadows across the stone walls. When the door closed behind him, the silence became so deep it almost had a weight. At first, Raymond heard nothing. Then it began. You always fail. He turned quickly, but no one was there. You never finish anything. People have lost faith in you. The whispers poured into the room like water. Each word was sharp, familiar, painful. He covered his ears, but the voices grew louder. These were his own thoughts. Every fear, every regret, every doubt he had tried to ignore. Raymond fell to his knees. Stop, he said, but the voices only echoed harder, bouncing off the stone walls, returning even stronger. He felt his breath shake, his chest tightened. He thought of leaving the room, running back down the mountain, forgetting this whole journey. But a memory appeared, a single moment from earlier on the trail, the clean line he carved in the cave. The quiet inside him when he finally stopped fighting. One line, one breath, one moment. Raymond closed his eyes. He placed his hands flat on the cold stone floor and took a slow, deep breath. This moment matters. He repeated it again, softly. This moment matters. The echoes began to change. The voices softened. The room grew quieter, bit by bit, like a storm finally losing its strength. Raymond opened his eyes. The candle flame was steady now, not shaking. He stood up slowly, heart calm, mind clear. But he did not know something important. The next choice he made here would shape the rest of his life. When Raymond stepped out of the room of echoes, the world felt different. The wind on the mountain seemed softer. The air felt clearer, almost lighter. Even the colors around him, green leaves, gray stones, golden light, looked sharper, as if he was seeing them for the first time. Elias stood outside, waiting quietly. You faced yourself, the old man said. That is harder than facing the world. Raymond didn't answer right away. He was still listening to the silence inside him. For the first time in a long while, his thoughts were not fighting. They were calm, slow, steady, like a river that finally stopped rising. They walked back to the village together. The path felt shorter than before. Raymond noticed small things he had ignored for years. The shape of the rocks, the rhythm of his steps, the sound of birds calling through the trees. These simple details felt like gifts he had forgotten to open. When they reached the village square, the festival lights were still hanging, though many had gone dark. People were slowly taking down decorations, talking about the night before. Some glanced at Raymond, expecting disappointment or excuses, but instead they saw someone different. Raymond went straight to his workshop. There was no rush, no pressure, no loud thoughts. He placed a new piece of wood on the table, a thick, beautiful piece of cedar Elias had given him before the climb. The surface was smooth, warm, and ready. He lit a small lamp beside him. Then he began. His hands moved slowly, breathing with the rhythm of the knife. Every cut was clear. Every motion was steady. When a distraction appeared in his mind, he saw it, let it pass, and returned to the moment. One breath, one line, one thought. Nothing more. Days passed quietly. When the villagers returned the following week to prepare for the final night of the festival, they found Raymond waiting in the square. In his hands was a finished lantern, simple, elegant, perfectly carved. But when he lit it, something unexpected happened. The lantern glowed with a warm, steady light. It was brighter than any lantern he had ever made. Not magical, just clear, pure, focused. The villagers stood around it in silence. They felt calmer just by looking at it. One child whispered, "It looks like it's breathing." Raymond smiled softly. He finally understood. A steady mind creates steady light. And this time, the quiet inside him stayed. Let's look at Raymond's story again, but in a simpler and softer way. Raymond lived in a small mountain village, a quiet place where fog moved through the streets every morning. He worked with wood. He made toys, boxes, lanterns, and small decorations for the people in the village. On the outside, his life looked calm. But inside, his mind was always noisy. His thoughts moved too fast, and he often felt lost. One morning, he noticed something was wrong. He couldn't focus on his work. His hands were slow, his mind was full, and he kept jumping from one idea to another. A simple job felt difficult. A simple bird carving took him hours. He felt frustration growing inside him, and every day became harder than the one before. The problem grew when he tried to fix everything at once. He worked too fast, changed tasks again and again, and pushed himself without rest. His mind became even louder. When he finally tried to make an important lantern for the village festival, he broke the wood. People were disappointed. Raymond felt embarrassed and ashamed. That night, his old mentor Elias found him and invited him to climb the mountain at dawn. Raymond agreed, and the next morning they began a quiet journey. On the mountain, Elias taught him 3 simple trials: sitting in silence, carrying water with full attention, and carving one slow, clean line. Each trial showed Raymond how unfocused his mind had become, but one small moment of quiet gave him hope. Then came the hardest part, the room of echoes. Inside that dark stone room, Raymond heard his own fears and doubts echoing around him. The voices were painful, but he didn't run. He placed his hands on the ground, breathed deeply, and focused on one clear thought: this moment matters. Slowly, the echoes faded. Raymond returned home with a calmer mind. In his workshop, he carved a new lantern using slow, steady movements. He breathed with each cut. He stayed present. And when the lantern was finished, its warm, steady light surprised everyone. People said the lantern looked different, peaceful, soft, alive. Raymond understood why. A calm mind creates clear work. A focused mind can build anything. My name is Raymond, and this is the story of the moment my life changed. For many years, I worked as a wood carver in a small mountain village. People thought my life was peaceful, but inside my mind, there was always noise. I woke up each morning with too many thoughts, old mistakes, new worries, unfinished dreams. I wanted to do good work, but my mind kept pulling me in every direction. One morning, everything became worse. I sat at my workbench, trying to finish a small wooden bird, but I couldn't focus. My hands felt heavy. My thoughts were fast and loud. I kept switching from one task to another, hoping something would feel easy. Nothing did. When I broke a piece of cedar wood I loved, something inside me broke too. At the festival, people whispered about me. They wondered what happened to the craftsman I used to be. Their words hurt, but the truth hurt even more. I couldn't control my own mind. That night, my old teacher Elias came to me. He said, "There is a storm inside you." And he was right. The next morning, we climbed the mountain together. The air was cold and clean. Elias taught me to sit in silence, to carry water step by step, and to carve one slow, perfect line. I failed many times. My thoughts kept running, but for one small moment I felt still. That tiny moment gave me hope. Then Elias took me to the room of echoes. Inside that stone room, I heard my own fears shouting back at me. "You fail. You forget. You never finish." The voices hit me like waves. I wanted to escape. I wanted to close my ears. But instead, I put my hands on the cold floor and told myself one simple line: "This moment matters." I breathed slowly, again and again. And the voices softened. For the first time in years, my mind became clear. When I returned to the village, I carved a new lantern, slowly, fully, with my whole attention. And when I lit it, the light was warm and steady. People felt calm just by looking at it. When my mind is calm, my hands become strong. When my thoughts are steady, my work becomes clear. A focused mind changed everything for me. Raymond's lantern shone through the village square long after the festival ended. Its warm light touched the walls, the streets, and the faces of people passing by. But more importantly, it touched their hearts. Many didn't know why the light felt different. They only knew it felt peaceful, soft, steady. And in a way, that is how a focused mind works. It doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it simply shines. When I think about Raymond's story, I imagine him standing beside that lantern, breathing quietly, feeling proud not because the lantern was beautiful, but because he finally understood himself. He learned that his thoughts didn't have to control him. His fears didn't have to lead him. His worries didn't have to speak louder than his goals. All he needed was one calm moment, repeated again and again. Maybe your life is busy right now. Maybe your thoughts sometimes feel loud, or messy, or confusing. Maybe you try to do many things at the same time. Or maybe you start something new, but lose your focus halfway. We all feel like that sometimes. Every person in every city and every village knows this feeling. But Raymond's story reminds us of something simple. A quiet mind is not impossible. A quiet mind, it begins with one breath, one moment of presence, one clear thought that says, "This moment matters." And when you choose that moment, even once, something inside you changes. You begin to see more clearly. You begin to move more slowly. You begin to feel more alive. A focused mind is not a big secret. It is a daily practice, like carving one careful line in a piece of wood. One sentence moral: a calm mind becomes a powerful mind. If this story helped you relax, think, or practice your English, I invite you to stay with this channel. You can like the video, subscribe, or leave a small comment about your favorite moment in Raymond's journey. Your voice helps this calm community grow. And if you want to improve even more, you can listen to the story again. Each time, you will understand a little more, and your English, just like Raymond's mind, will become clearer and stronger. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next gentle story.